Thank you, Speaker. It is with great pleasure that I rise today for the third reading debate of Bill 28, an act to proclaim the month of October as Hispanic Heritage Month. As many of you know, this is something that I've been working on for some time now, and I'd like to thank everyone involved that helped to make this day a reality, and a special thank you to my staff, Michael Palucci and Celso Pereira, who are joining us here today in the House, as well as Matt Iannucci. I'd like to thank all of the House leaders for seeing the importance of this bill and for pushing it through to third reading. Before I start, I'd like to point out that we have a number of members of the Hispanic community who will be joining us here today for this important day, and these are prominent individuals who publish newspapers, run cultural centers, work in banks, and post in public service, all of whom contribute to shaping the lives of countless Ontarians. I'm happy to say that we also have with us those who have signed petitions calling on this legislator to pass Bill 28. And I want to reserve special thanks to members of the community who I have been consulting with at every stage of this bill: Fernando Valladares, Oscar Vigil, Claudio Ruiz, Claudia Montoya. And Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that they're all listening here bright and early for this historic debate in the Ontario Legislature. Unfortunately, not in attendance today is Margarita Feliciano, Professor Emerita at Glendon College's Hispanic Studies Department. Professor Feliciano does tremendous work within the Hispanic community and organizes the annual Festival of Images and Words. Mr. Speaker, simply put, this bill provides our province with an opportunity to recognize and celebrate the Hispanic Canadian community here in Ontario. Our province must pay tribute to the culture that binds Spanish speakers together, and Mr. Speaker, this bill does just that. The strong influence that peoples of Hispanic origin have had on our world is evident. As I mentioned in our second reading debate, individuals like Frida Kahlo, Salvador Dali, and Gabriel Garcia Marquez possess a unique influence over art and culture in our world. The rich contributions of these giants of the Hispanic community are well known. However, we must recognize the outstanding achievements and lasting influence of the Hispanic community right here in Ontario. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to discuss the history of this fantastic community in this great province of ours. As pointed out in the preamble of this bill, the Hispanic community in Canada was established by a few thousand Spanish migrants in 1914. The first significant surge in immigration came during the 1970s, which is a time of great socioeconomic and political turbulence across Spanish-speaking countries. In the 1980s, armed conflict prompted a further influx of immigrants. Most recently, since the 1990s, immigration from the Spanish-speaking world has been characterized as a professional wave of individuals traveling to Canada to study or work. For those who came during the early waves of immigration, life in Canada was often challenging. These early immigrants experienced unemployment and, in many cases, racism and discrimination. Despite immigrating from a number of nations, each with its own distinct culture, Spanish speakers developed a shared community and gathered in certain hubs around the province, such as in Toronto's Kensington Market. The Hispanic community has recently grown significantly in size and has now become one of the most prominent communities in the country. There are approximately 500,000 Canadians of Hispanic origin, but this number is substantially higher when we include non-citizens and permanent residents. Not only this, the Hispanic community is also one of the fastest growing populations in the entire country. I use these numbers in our second reading debate, but I think they are quite powerful. Between 1996 and 2001, the number of Hispanic peoples in Canada increased by 32%, while the overall population grew by only 4% during the same period. Spanish is Canada's most spoken language after English and French, and has been the fastest growing foreign language spoken by Canadians since 2001. Almost 50% of Hispanic Canadians have at least a bachelor's degree, and another 12% have a non-university diploma. Also, the Toronto Hispanic Chamber of Commerce approximates that the economic impact of Latin American businesses on the Toronto area economy between $49.2 million and $73.8 million. Mr. Speaker, it's hard to argue with the fact that the influence of this population on our province is immense. In my riding of Davenport alone, there are approximately 10,000 citizens of Hispanic origin. The Hispanic community continues to make such a tremendous impact to my riding, and by just walking through Davenport on any day, anyone can see these contributions are very tangible. It's hard to dismiss the beautiful Lula Lounge on Dundas West, which has established itself as the premier venue in the city for Latin music and dancing. Club Amistad, located at the Davenport Perth Neighborhood and Community Health Center, is a wonderful social and recreational group for Spanish-speaking men and women from various Latin cultures. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Villa Las Flores, the nonprofit housing complex located off St. Helens, and the founder of this charitable organization is the very strong community leader, Fernando Valadares. Every September, there is also the wonderful Viva Mexico Festival hosted at Earls Court Park. The immense contributions of Hispanic Canadians are clearly not just felt in Davenport or even just in the GTA. I have to say that during our second reading debate, I really enjoyed the very eloquent remarks from other members about the impact of the Hispanic community within their own lives and in their ridings. One that immediately comes to mind is the member opposite from Temiskaming Cochrane's very emphatic remarks of his constituent, Martin Melendez, who brought his expertise of cheesemaking from El Salvador to our province. The minister responsible for seniors spoke about the vibrant Spanish-speaking community he has in his riding of York West, of course, to showcase the Plaza Latina on Melvin Drive. And the member from York Southwest, who will be joining this debate just shortly, spoke about the great organizations in her riding, such as the York Hispanic Center. Mr. Speaker, it is no coincidence that all of us here in the legislature can speak so highly of the valuable contributions that Canadians of Hispanic origin make within all of our communities. Last time I rose in the legislature, I told the story of Alberto Guerrero, an individual who embodies these rich contributions of the Hispanic community to our province. Alberto Guerrero was a leading figure in the vibrant Chilean music scene. Moving to Toronto in 1918, Guerrero single-handedly brought the music of modern 20th century composers to Canada. In time, he became the most important music teacher in the country. And Mr. Speaker, he mentored young Canadian pianists, including Glenn Gould, arguably Canada's most celebrated classic pianist. I believe that this is such a fantastic story that embodies the real, tangible influence of the Hispanic community to our province. Today, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to speak on a more local level about a constituent of mine who I think embodies these characteristics. Severino Centrito lives in the beautiful Regal Heights neighborhood in my riding of Davenport, who I think deserves a lot of praise for his community service. Mr. Centrito originates from Argentina, and for 15 years he has been working to make our community the best it can be. Severino is a member of the Regal Heights Residents Association and has provided great assistance for the Davenport Perth Neighborhood and Community Health Centre. He was also a member of the City of Toronto Seniors Forum to serve as a voice for senior residents in our community. I first met Mr. Centrito at the Regal Heights Residents Association Community Cleanup, and I'm happy to say that him and his wife Hilda are watching today, this momentous day. And so I'd like to give him a round of applause for all his hard work. Gracias, Severino. It is precisely these individuals that make it important to declare October Hispanic Heritage Month. The celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month will allow us as a province to recognize the rich contributions Hispanic Canadians have made to the province's social, economic, political, and multicultural fabric. Mr. Speaker, this is an important bill. In 2015, it can be easy to accept our province's multiculturalism as a foregone conclusion. And if you think back even 20 or 30 years, it's impressive to see how far we've come. But Mr. Speaker, there is still more work to be done. We have to recognize that in Toronto, a city of nearly 3 million people with a substantial Hispanic population, Councillor Cesar Palazzo is the only elected official of Hispanic origin at any level of government. Not one of us here in the chamber comes from a Spanish-speaking background. That makes it so much more important that we proclaim October as Hispanic Heritage Month. If this bill passes today, I encourage all members of this House to reach out to the Spanish-speaking community within their ridings in preparation for the celebrations of Hispanic Heritage Month. And with the Para-Pan American Games coming to Ontario in just a few months, on occasion in which we will be welcoming so many delegations from Spanish-speaking countries, I can't think of a better time to do this. So I want to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity to speak, and I hope that you all join me in supporting this bill today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Further debate?
The ayes are 90, the nays are 0.
The ayes being 90 and the nays being 0, I declare the motion carried. Be it resolved that the bill do now pass and be entitled as in the motion.